My name is Shayna Ford, 31, and I assumed the New Year's Eve countdown on that Minneapolis rooftop would be another routine family toast. 7, 6, the crowd chanted. I leaned toward my cousin and mentioned quietly that I had just signed for a $1 million penthouse in D.C. Top floor, full view, the works. Chase whipped his head around so fast his champagne spilled. $1 million in D.C.? Where'd you get that kind of money? His glass slipped and shattered across the floor. Mom's smile stopped instantly. Dad froze mid-bite. Taylor stared at me. You're serious? A penthouse? Uncle Lloyd pushed back his chair in the sudden silence. You've been overlooking Shayna since she was a kid and never noticed. Fireworks lit the sky, but everyone kept staring at me. If you've ever felt like the invisible sibling, hit like and subscribe. This is where the family picture starts to break. Growing up in Woodbury, Minnesota, the imbalance began when my brother, Chase Ford, entered 5th grade. One Tuesday after dinner, Mom Gail Ford and Dad Marvin Ford called a quick family meeting. They explained that Chase would transfer to St. Croix Prep, a private academy with polished halls and dedicated counselors, because he was sensitive and needed extra support. I sat on the couch, legs folded under me, expecting some plan for me too. But the conversation ended. I stayed at Woodbury High, navigating crowded hallways where lockers slammed constantly, and the history teacher relied on photocopies because textbooks rarely arrived. I adjusted fast, carving out study hours in the public library's back corner, surrounded by the smell of old paper and cleaner, flipping through borrowed SAT guides until the pages curled. At 15, I talked my way into a barista job at Corner Cafe on Valley Creek Road, learning espresso pulls, balancing trays of scones, and dodging rush hour spills. Tips came as worn singles and loose change. I saved every bit in a jar at home, determined to build my own path without asking for anything. Chase's routine was completely different. He met a private tutor in our dining room every Monday and Wednesday, working through geometry on the laptop Dad bought specifically for lessons, then headed to tennis clinics in White Bear Lake that ran until evening. Summers meant overnight camps along the North Shore, where he learned kayaking and fire building, returning with mosquito bites and new hoodies that filled half the laundry basket. I listened to his stories over breakfast while calculating how many weekend shifts I needed to afford new shoes for fall. By 17, I had saved $7,000, every dollar earned from steaming oat milk and wiping counters after closing. The monthly statement went into a locked drawer beneath my sweaters, a quiet milestone no one noticed. Whenever I needed a ride for a group project or a graphing calculator for pre-calc, Mom and Dad repeated the same line. Chase still struggled with confidence and needed extra attention, and I always managed fine. Their logic sounded reasonable at the time, delivered with tired smiles after work, but it sat on me like dust, easy to ignore once, harder after the 10th time. I kept smiling at dinner while Chase described another camp story, my own updates reduced to brief nods before the topic shifted. The gap widened without arguments or slammed doors, just a slow drift that taught me to expect less and build more on my own. Our Sweet 16 birthdays showed the contrast even more clearly. Chase turned 16 first, and Mom and Dad transformed the Afton Alps Country Club into his private venue for the night. A professional DJ played loud across the golf course, long tables overflowed with seafood flown in fresh, and friends arrived in rented limos waiting in the valet line. The highlight came when Dad handed him the keys to a brand new red Jeep Wrangler. The engine revved as he drove his friends around the lot while everyone cheered. He came back beaming, uploading videos that gained likes before the cake was cut, with the whole night captured by a photographer Mom hired. 3 years later, my 16th birthday smelled like delivery pizza from the place down the block. 4 close friends sat on the couch with paper plates balanced on their knees, laughing over board games and a movie on the old TV. Dad slipped away early to watch a game in the den, and Mom stopped in long enough to take one quick photo before returning to laundry. My gift was a used laptop I had helped pick out on Craigslist. Scratched screen, but functional, loaded with what I needed for graphics class. We blew out candles on a store-bought sheet cake, sang off key, and ended the night by 10, everyone leaving with leftover slices wrapped in napkins. Summer breaks made the difference even clearer. After his sophomore year, Chase traveled to Italy for 2 weeks, touring Rome and Florence, snapping photos at the Colosseum, and riding gondolas in Venice. He returned with stories of gelato flavors and ancient ruins, tan lines from the Amalfi Coast, and souvenirs scattered across the kitchen like trophies. That same summer, I worked 2 jobs, delivering newspapers before dawn on bike routes I mapped out the night before, then babysitting neighborhood kids until their parents came home, reading picture books and making simple dinners in quiet houses. Christmas mornings confirmed the pattern. Chase unwrapped AirPods Pro, Patagonia jackets in colors he'd chosen from the catalog, and new gear stacked high enough to block the fireplace. My gifts were smaller: a $50 Target gift card inside a handmade card, and a winter coat from the outlet mall that fit after a quick adjustment with safety pins. I thanked them sincerely, folding the card into my pocket, already figuring out how to stretch it across textbooks and supplies for spring semester. After the holiday gifts were put away one evening, I finally gathered the nerve during dinner cleanup and pulled Mom aside in the kitchen, dishes clinking as I loaded the dishwasher. "I could use a little more attention sometimes, too," I said quietly, wiping a counter that was already clean. She paused with a plate in hand, her expression soft but steady. She repeated that Chase still struggled with confidence in many areas and needed more focus, while I was already strong and handled things alone. College separated our paths more sharply than high school ever had. Chase enrolled at the University of St. Thomas, a private campus with manicured lawns and small seminar rooms. Mom and Dad refinanced the house to cover tuition and kept him comfortable in a dorm suite with its own kitchenette. He started in business administration, excited about networking events and guest speakers from local firms. Midway through freshman year, the late-night messages began, concerns about workload and doubts that the major fit his creative side. Mom and Dad booked flights to St. Paul instantly, meeting with advisors to arrange a switch to communications, covering extra fees, and extending his meal plan to ease the transition. I earned a full scholarship to the University of Minnesota, covering tuition, books, and lab access, and took a work-study job in the financial aid office on the East Bank, processing paperwork and helping students manage loans and schedules. The office smelled like coffee and printer ink. I learned the system thoroughly, spotting patterns in aid packages and guiding peers through appeals and deadlines. Sophomore year increased my responsibilities. I supervised freshman clerks and led evening workshops on budgeting spreadsheets, sharpening my skills with numbers. Chase's next pivot came junior year when communications felt too structured. He shifted again, this time to liberal arts with a focus on film studies, which required new equipment and software licenses. Another issue developed during spring break. He flew home suddenly, citing burnout and uncertainty about electives. Dad drove up the following weekend with a check for summer courses abroad, while Mom reorganized the basement into a temporary editing space with a high-end monitor he had researched. They stayed a full week, attending parent sessions and meeting professors to ensure the change worked. My own progress accelerated during year 3 with an internship at a venture capital firm in the North Loop, commuting by light rail before sunrise to review pitch decks and model revenue projections for early-stage startups. I built a personal investment portfolio on the side, putting small amounts from each paycheck into index funds and a few tech stocks that grew 18% in the first quarter. The partners noticed, assigning me lead on due diligence for a health tech deal that closed successfully and made the quarterly report. Meanwhile, Chase's semester in Rome as part of his film program led to an emergency request for $4,000 after he overspent on production gear and unexpected travel fees. Mom transferred the funds while grocery shopping, reassuring him that things would settle once he focused on his project. Dad followed up with care packages of adapters and snacks, tracking the delivery online. I secured a competitive summer placement at a larger VC firm in Chicago, living in a shared sublet near the Loop and working through term sheets for Series A rounds. The role demanded long days and weekend site visits, but the exposure to deal flow and founder negotiations felt like the real training I needed. I sent updates to my advisor in Minneapolis with spreadsheets and valuation models, but never considered looping in my family. They assumed I had another campus job and didn't ask. 5 years after graduation, I had become a vice president at the venture firm, managing a portfolio across biotech accelerators and sustainable energy ventures in the Midwest. The job came with a six-figure base salary and bonuses tied to fund performance that often doubled it, allowing me to grow my personal investments to $4 million through steady positions in private placements and secondary markets. My mornings began with partner meetings in glass-walled conference rooms overlooking the Mississippi, reviewing cap tables and exit plans, and afternoons filled with founder calls and visits to warehouses adapted for vertical farming. I negotiated term sheets with confidence, built from years of self-driven study, closing deals that supported apps connecting rural clinics to specialists, and platforms improving supply chains for regional manufacturers. Chase graduated a year late after extending his film program with independent study credits. He entered a job market that didn't match his collection of short documentaries and experimental edits. His first job lasted 8 months at a boutique production house in Northeast Minneapolis, creating social media clips for small breweries before budget cuts removed the position. He moved to retail management at an outdoor gear store in the Mall of America, then tried freelance videography with irregular wedding and corporate gigs, followed by a brief barista role in Uptown where tips barely covered transportation. The fifth attempt, a coordinator position at an arts nonprofit, ended after 4 months when grant funding ran out, leaving him unemployed and scrolling listings from the couch. Mom and Dad kept their support steady, covering rent on a loft in St. Louis Park with exposed brick and a balcony, as well as payments on his SUV lease and full insurance coverage with roadside assistance he used more than once. They sent money each month without hesitation, calling it short-term help while he worked on passion projects, sometimes adding gift cards for groceries or new editing software. I rented a compact one-bedroom in Uptown within walking distance of the lakes, directing 80% of every paycheck into brokerage accounts and retirement funds that grew steadily. Weekends were spent reviewing quarterly statements over coffee at the diner below my building, adjusting positions based on market shifts and upcoming IPOs. The routine contrasted sharply with Chase's uncertainty. Family conversations still centered around his potential. Mom asking about auditions or networking events, Dad offering resume tips from his insurance background. They checked on me through quick texts about weather or holidays, assuming my promotions meant everything was fine and didn't require attention. To them, I remained the dependable one who didn't need guidance, while Chase continued searching for the path that would finally work. Seconds before midnight, my cousin Taylor Mason grinned and asked, "So, have you moved into the new place yet? It sounds incredible." I shrugged and took a sip of champagne. A penthouse in Washington, D.C. $1 million, full view of the PTOEC. The comment lingered for a moment before Chase shot upright, his chair scraping across the rooftop tile. "$1 million in D.C.? What sketchy thing are you mixed up in?" His voice carried across the table. His champagne glass slipped and shattered into pieces that reflected the string lights above. The noise cut through the countdown, drawing attention from nearby groups who paused their toasts and lowered their phones. Mom and Dad went pale. Mom lifted her hand to her face, nails pressing into her cheek, while Dad partially stood, pulling Chase down by the sleeve and whispering for him to calm down as guests glanced over. The rooftop DJ instinctively turned down the volume. Even the quartet in the corner missed a beat. Taylor dropped her phone onto the tablecloth, the screen still glowing with an unfinished message. A waiter paused mid-step, dessert plates trembling slightly on his tray. Uncle Lloyd Mason pushed back his chair, stood, and said steadily, "You've been hurting Shayna from the beginning and never recognized it." Silence settled across the rooftop, fireworks prepared to launch above us, but no one looked away from the table. The city lights across the Mississippi continued undisturbed, the years condensed into a single moment for me, every overlooked milestone appearing like a fast slideshow. Report cards brushed aside, acceptance letters unnoticed, promotions acknowledged in passing, while I sat alone in airport lounges, long study nights in library cubicles while Chase traveled abroad. The words came out before I could stop them. A full scholarship to the U, treated like spam mail. A summer internship in Chicago, never once asked about. A Sweet 16 with pizza and a Craigslist laptop while he had a country club event, a DJ, and a Jeep presented like an award. Christmas gift cards for me versus the steady stream of gear for him. AirPods, jackets, and gadgets stacking high under the tree. Every one of his challenges solved with a wire transfer, and every achievement of mine met with a quick, "That's nice," before the topic changed. Each example created a quiet ripple, reaching every face around me. Mom's eyes filled, mascara close to smudging. Dad's grip on Chase relaxed, his knuckles still tense. Taylor stared wide-eyed, ready to speak but stopping herself. Uncle Lloyd stayed standing, arms crossed, giving the truth room to settle. A breeze lifted the napkins and carried the smell of grilled food from a nearby station. Chase's face shifted from red to deeper shades, tension building. "You think you're better because you scraped by? We gave you everything you needed." He hit the table with his fist. Silverware shook, a wine glass tipped, and Merlot spread across the tablecloth, soaking into embroidered napkins. Plates rattled. A cousin dropped her phone. A fork slid to the edge and tapped a glass. Without responding, Chase shoved his chair back, let it fall, and pushed through the crowd toward the elevators. His shoulders were stiff under the holiday lights as he disappeared into the city glow. The elevator opened almost immediately, doors closing behind him just as the first firework went off above us. 3 months later, I moved permanently to Washington, D.C., and launched my own venture fund from a corner office in Georgetown. The choice became clear overnight. I blocked Mom's number, then Dad's, then Chase's. Each tap was its own quiet separation. Family email threads disappeared into deleted folders, leaving only professional contacts. The Penthouse closed the same week. I moved in with simple furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the PTOIC at sunrise, and the steady sound of the city behind conference calls with limited partners who trusted my experience. Chase lost his final job coordinating events at a local gallery after the owner downsized, leaving him with $28,000 in credit card debt from equipment leases and unpaid rent. Mom and Dad finally stopped supporting him. No more transfers for the loft, no more SUV coverage. His vehicle was repossessed and taken to an impound lot off Highway 36. They sold the Woodbury house at a loss to clear his balances, the sale closing quickly to a young couple who admired the renovated kitchen. Boxes filled the driveway. Holiday decorations and old photos went into storage units they struggled to afford. They downsized to a one-bedroom apartment in Roseville, tucked behind a strip mall with flickering signs and coin-operated laundry. Mom took early retirement from her store management job. Dad reduced his insurance clients to part-time. Their fixed income stretched across utility bills and basic groceries. The living room doubled as their bedroom with a pull-out couch. Counters held pill organizers and clipped coupons. Chase stayed on a friend's sofa in South Minneapolis, the cushions worn from temporary stays that became long-term. He signed up for Uber Eats delivery, biking downtown in all weather, the insulated bag strapped to the rack, his earnings going straight to minimum payments on maxed-out cards. Nights blurred into searching for side gigs that led nowhere. The light of his phone, the only brightness in a room smelling faintly of old takeout. My fund grew quickly, $12 million under management by the end of the first quarter, backed by a seed investment in a fintech startup improving cross-border payments and a Series A in sustainable packaging. The portfolio scaled fast. I lived in the penthouse I had purchased for $1 million, spending mornings on the terrace reviewing pitch decks while the river reflected early sunlight. Board meetings replaced family meals. Equity terms became the language of daily conversations. Favoring one child doesn't help either person. It weakens them both in different ways. I chose independence, even if it cost me the entire family. Thank you for staying through the story. If anything connected with you, feel free to share in the comments. I read them all. Like, subscribe, and tell me, have you ever had to walk away to understand your value?